Aerodozz again with another Mogis video. Now I'm playing against Kami of the Crescent Moon. Now this guy is a pretty good multiplayer commander, but I'm not sure of his viability in single player. In multiplayer he can just sort of act as a group hug deck and allow your opponents to draw cards, but in reality he just combos off with the cards that he draws himself. So he's pretty good multiplayer, but again, not too sure of his viability in single player. But I guess this guy has a pretty good deck. He drops his general down turn 2. And Inquisition him. Client's lagging a bit. So I see Callous Oppressor and Dissolve. And I'm not too worried about the Callous Oppressor, but I don't want him to sort of build up on counterspells, so I just go ahead and discard his Dissolve. Drop down Nihil Spellbomb because I can. And as expected, he drops down his Callous Oppressor. Now you can choose a creature type that you don't want him to control, so I basically chose human since I have a Dark Confidant in my hand, which I drop and then strip mine one of his lands. A better play would have been to strip mine his island, since it's a basic land. Now I saw that he had Jace in his hand when I Inquisitioned him, so I'm keeping mana open for Hero's Downfall in case he drops it. But then he ends up exiling Reality Strobe, which is kind of annoying because the only way I can stop it is through Pyroblast or getting rid of the permanent that he's trying to return to my hand. But at this point, he does not drop Jace, so I just go ahead and murderous cut his general because I don't want him drawing lands. Drawing cards. And at the end of his turn, I just Nihil Spellbomb him for the extra card draw, since I don't suspect he'll make much use of his graveyard. And over here, I just drop down Chandra, since his 1 mana guy can't do much damage to Chandra. His 1 power guy. And here he mind controls my Dark Confidant, and I don't want him having that, so I just activate Chandra's ability on him. And since he's tapped out, I just use Winter Orb. And at this point I have a pretty good lockdown on him if it weren't for the exiled Reality Strobe, which will be coming out of exile next turn. So I'm kind of worried of him using it on Chandra. So I just dropped down Mogis, and since this is a more attrition based deck, I figured the 2 damage per turn will really hurt him. And turns out I was right, since he opted to use Reality Strobe on Mogis and just attack Chandra with his Callous Oppressor. And at this point, I just sort of buy time. He starts untapping his lands. And I drop. Or sorry, I elect not to drop anything because I know that his reality strobe is coming out, so instead of returning Chandra to hand, he returns Winter Orb, which is good for me, since now I can just Hero's Downfall him. And I know he has Jace in his hand, but I do have a Mind Twist. But figuring he might have a counter, I just drop down some ramp. And in case he drops Jace, I leave mana open for Chaos Warp. But he does not, so I activate my Volrod Stronghold to bring Bob back, which he counters. And I just top deck a Mishra's Workshop here, which is awesome, which means I can drop a Oblivion Stone, and I thought he would counter this, but he did not take the bait. So I just used Read the Bones. And he drops High Tide here, and then drops a Consecrated Sphinx. And this is a pretty bad card to have down and play for my opponent, so I Chaos Warp him. And again, he does not counter. He finally does take the counter bait when I drop Crucible of Royals, because he knows that I have a Strip Mine in my graveyard, and I could just lock him down. And taking advantage of this, I just use Winter Orb. His Reality Strobe is one turn away, so I'm hoping he just uses that on my Winter Orb, which he does. And here I'm just trying to bait any more counters that he might have. Sulfuric Vortex would basically end the game eventually for him, so he responds by activating his artifact. And at this point, I know that it's very unlikely that he might have a counter, so I use the final card in my arsenal, Mind Twist, which ends the game.